Hi there, you're listening to the Estranged Heart podcast, and I'm your host, Kreed Revere. Welcome back to our returning listeners, and if this is your first time here, thank you for selecting this podcast to listen to. As we begin today's episode, I invite you to grab a cup of coffee or tea, settle in, and listen with an open heart. But first, the regular disclaimer. I am not a licensed therapist or counselor. Nothing within this podcast should be considered or taken as therapy. If you are in need of therapeutic support such as counseling, please seek out a therapist near you. Hi there. Thanks for joining me for another episode on the Estranged Heart podcast. Before we dive into today's episode, a couple of announcements and reminders. I'd like to thank everyone for the positive responses received regarding the story from an estranged dad that aired over the last 2 weeks, part 1 and part 2. The feedback was great. I have been in touch with that dad, and he's humbled by that. And he has also considered potentially starting a group for estranged dads. If you're interested in something along those lines, maybe words of encouragement for him to potentially start this. Running a group takes a lot of work and effort, and is not something that folks should jump into lightly. But it is something he's considering. And if it would be of interest to you, helpful for you, if you would like to email me, I'm happy to get those to him until such time as he is ready to put himself out there for you to contact him directly. So feel free to email me at theestrangedheart@gmail.com. Also still seeking estranged adult children and estranged parents who might be interested in joining the Facebook group that I am launching. It was supposed to have launched in July. I believe it's probably going to be September just due to some logistical things that have come up for me. But I'm still looking for those who would like to participate in that Facebook group. Again, it would be estranged adult children and estranged parents not from the same family. And there is an application process and a vetting out to ensure that folks are there and members of the group for all the right reasons of learning and growing and exploring, and not criticisms and judgments, etc. So if you're interested in that, please email me and I'm happy to get you on the list. Also, a word to the estranged adult children who listen to this podcast. If you are, it's not uncommon for me to receive emails from estranged parents who have said something along the lines of, "Hey, my kid pointed me to your podcast and I've been listening. Can we talk?" And so I wanted to just let the estranged adult children know, if you are ever interested in having me reach out to a parent on your behalf in order to potentially facilitate, mediate the beginnings of reconciliation, I'm happy to do that. If you would like to email me at theestrangedheart@gmail.com, I'm happy to do that. I know that a lot of estranged adult children are timid and have fears, and many of them rightly so, about reaching out to their parent, and or they simply just do not know where to start. And so if that is you and you really are wanting reconciliation with your parent and you feel that a neutral third party could be helpful for that, I'm happy to talk to you and discuss that further. Again, just shoot me a quick email and I'm happy to respond and get back to you on that. And the final two things I have today are reminders of the workshops we have coming up. I have a validation workshop that is coming on Sunday, July 30th. That will be at 3 p.m. Pacific time. Again, Sunday, July the 30th at 3 p.m. Pacific time. if you're interested in that, I've gotten lots of great feedback from the first one I did. Parents were really surprised to learn about validation when they really thought they knew what validation was, and they left the workshop just in awe of all the things they didn't realize were actually in validation. And it spurred a lot of curiosity and things along those lines. So if you're interested in that workshop, please email me. And also, there will be a webinar that I am going to be hosting on Wednesday, July the 26th at 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. Again, Wednesday, the 26th of July at 4:30 p.m. And that webinar is titled, well, it's basically how to find a therapist. We're going to talk about all the questions. I get so many inquiries about how to find the right therapist because so many therapists are not aware of, trained in, fully understand estrangement. And so, because of my background working professionally with therapists, I understand their training. I understand what the difference in all the credentials, different credentials mean, and what I suggest my clients look for in a therapist. So, if you're interested in that, if you've been trying to find a therapist and you just don't know where to start, how to begin, or once you begin looking for a therapist, you don't know what the next steps are and questions and things to consider. If that is of interest to you, please email me and I'm again happy to get you on the list, theestrangedheart@gmail.com. And I'm trying to put together an Eventbrite um, thing for both of these, the workshop and the webinar, so that you're able to just go in and register, sign up and pay kind of thing. So working on that, trying to get it going, be watching social media for when I do have that up and going. So, on to today's episode. I think that's all of the announcements and reminders for today. That was a lot. So, today's episode is titled What to Do When a Parent Won't Take Accountability. And this particular episode came about from an estranged adult child who emailed me and asked me specifically to do an episode on this topic. And I hope that I can do it justice and answer the questions that this estranged adult child had. And I'll go over a little bit about their reach out or outreach to me, and just with a few things, questions that they had and statements about their particular situation. Um, it's very generalized, and I'm not going to be revealing any identifying information, but I think it's important to understand the language that an estranged adult child typically uses. And when this child reached out, this adult child reached out, what they had to say was not was very common in what I hear from other estranged adult children. It's not very unique to this particular um, child or family. So before we start, today's quote is by Pat Summit, and it goes as follows. Accountability is essential to personal growth as well as team growth. How can you improve if you're never wrong? If you don't admit a mistake and take responsibility for it, you're bound to make the same one again. So, this estranged adult child, as I said, reached out and asked if I would do a podcast episode on this particular topic. They emailed me and stated things like, what to do about parents who aren't willing to self reflect or acknowledge any possibility of having made a mistake, or just generally taking accountability for being a human parent, right? And knowing that none of us are perfect. Um, this child, one of the parents of this adult child, was described as being fragile and basically believes that she's above reproach, really. Um, and the adult child believes that apologizing for anything is just completely and totally out of the realm of it even being a question, let alone followed by action. Um, they advise in this letter that they in their entire adult life, or their entire life, they do not recall ever having seen this parent apologize for anything. And they wanted to know if I could speak to the parents who aren't willing to do any of the work, um, and is reconciliation possible if that doesn't happen. And this adult child feels like they're doing all of the emotional legwork for the family. They are in therapy, individual therapy, group therapy, doing self-improvement courses, etc. But the entire family is in denial that there's anything that's wrong outside of just the estrangement. So, um, so that's kind of where this today's episode started from. So, when a parent doesn't want to take accountability, and I hesitate when I say the word want, WANT, um, because I don't necessarily know that all parents even recognize what taking accountability even means. Now, I am not saying that's an excuse. It's not. It's flat. It just flat out isn't an excuse. I'm trying to give perspective and understanding behind that. At the same time, so it's kind of like, again, the two sides of the same coin. When um, a parent's actions or lack thereof cause pain on the adult child's side, right? It's generally not done with an intent to cause harm, but it does. And so there has to be a level of understanding from the parent side about why has this caused pain? Where does this come from? How can I correct it, et cetera, et cetera. From a child's perspective, when a parent will not take accountability, I think it can help an adult child to be able to find some sort of peace when they can have an understanding. Again, not something that you want by any stretch of the imagination, but have an understanding that it might be beyond their capability, meaning the parents. If the parent is in their particular echo chamber, meaning all of the people around them are supporting them and telling them they've done nothing wrong, and everything is fine in the family, and it's that kid's problem. If they're in that echo chamber, it's going to be really difficult for them to begin to entertain something different. And even even though you as the adult child are coming to them and saying, I am your kid, and I am telling you that this has hurt me, and I'm asking you to take accountability for this. It's a foreign concept to them, and a lot of them will not acknowledge any sort of insecurities or inability to do things to their kids, right? So they may be in their echo chamber, right, and getting all of this information from all their people, their social circle, all of that, right, all their siblings, et cetera, et cetera. And they may be facing fears of their own, and that stems from their own childhood, and oftentimes prevents taking accountability, prevents an apology, prevents even an awareness or curiosity around anything else because of whatever traumas they've incurred in their life. Um, I have encountered some clients of mine who are resistant to that type of thing. And it's, again, I don't think that it is an intentional thing, meaning they are like, I am not going to take accountability. I know I need to. I know what accountability is, and I'm not going to do it. I don't think that that's the case in most cases. There may be some outliers to that, but I think that in the majority of cases, it's a parent who has had their own significant traumas, and they are not even aware of that. And so they are operating on autopilot in a state of protection, and they are clueless about it, absolutely clueless. So, one of the ways, well, in addition to this, is their own most, well, I say most, many of the parents that I work with, or interact with on any level have fairly significant self worth issues. And some of them tell me they don't, and I can read it beneath the surface. Again, self preservation mode. They're trying to protect themselves from the hurt and pain. And again, they came from a generation where we don't talk about those things. We shove it under the rug and we keep on keeping on. And so to bring that out from under the rug is is something that's very taboo to them because of how they've were raised. And so there's this lack of curiosity, this lack of awareness around that. Again, not I'm not approving of it. I'm not saying it's right. It's just trying to have a level of understanding. Facing, fear of facing, confronting their past mistakes. I know this was a big one for me. Was, you know, oh my gosh, if I admit that I've, had all these wrongdoings, then I'm in a place of lacking of control. And that is a really big, scary thing for most human beings who have experienced traumas and or childhoods who where they had no control. They had no control over their life. Maybe they entered marriages after leaving their family home and had zero control there, right? So it is kind of a self protection mechanism. All right. And sometimes it's their pride, right? It's and that again, it can be seen as a sign of weakness to people to admit that they were wrong. And I can't admit to my kid that I'm can't show any signs of weakness to my children. Um, and that vulnerability piece is not there for a lot of them. And again, it's out of that preservation, self protection mode, that type of thing. And then outside of that, we also have the cultural norms and traditional values and all the things of the older generations had that the younger generations are flipping on their head. And so there can be resistance to that when, depending on how it's delivered, the message is delivered to the parent. A message of, you know what, when you decide to get your head out of your ass and take accountability for all the ways that you hurt me, well, then we can have a talk. Versus, mom, I was really hurt when A, B, and C happened. And I am just asking that maybe you do some self reflection around that, right? Those are two different ways to initiate and try to get different responses. In that first example I gave, automatically builds up walls. They feel judged. They feel, um, you know, I I have failed, and none of us want to feel like we're a failure, right? And so the approach can also stall out a lot of things, and that's a lot of what parents get from me when I'm coaching them, is that they feel like their their walls begin to come down, and they feel like they can be more vulnerable because I'm not judging them. Excuse me. Because I'm not judging them. I'm not passing judgment against them. I understand their humanity and being human, and here we are, right? Now, that being said, I was once an estranged adult child. I get it. When you have been hurt like that, it is really hard at times to self regulate and be able to have a cool, calm conversation with someone who basically doesn't want to hear what you have to say. So I understand that as well. We've kind of talked about the family dynamics, if they're in their echo chamber and the family all agrees with them and is telling them that it's all the kids' fault and how dare they be so disrespectful. Well, then you're not really going to get too far, right? So is reconciliation possible? As I tell the parents, I don't ever shut the door. I mean, I don't say ever. It's a rare occasion that I suggest anyone shut the door. I am a firm believer that we don't know what tomorrow holds. And we don't know what is going to happen in a person's life that's going to, flip the switch and they're going to have a change of heart. And that's either the kids and or the parents. And so do I, can I say, that's no, it's not worth your time? No, I can't say that. And I would not even dare to say something like that without knowing specifics of a particular family's history and things like that to even know where to begin. Do I think that it is hopeless? I don't think that it's hopeless. I think, is it going to take work? Yes. Is it up to the kid to do all the emotional labor and everything and the parents sit back and cruise right along? No, I don't agree with that. Um, I am a firm believer that the parent should lead the way, and at the same time, if you have a parent who isn't aware of all the things of self-improvement today and taking accountability and all of these things, it's going to be an uphill climb. Um, this is why a lot of kids will refer their parents to my podcast. And this is why I started the podcast out today earlier talking about, you know, if you want me to reach out to them on your behalf, I'm happy to do that to potentially get a conversation going, either with me and or the adult child. But sometimes people really need to hear it from a person other than the person they are estranged from, right? Or the person that is passing judgment against them. And rightly so. I mean, when you've been hurt, right? And we as human beings generally pass judgment. I'm a neutral third party. I don't know either side. And so I'm better able to have those conversations. And generally folks are a little more open to listening to me versus their loved one that they are in conflict with. So I don't feel it's hopeless until such time as I talk to someone and can make a better judgment call on what that is after learning the specifics of that family. Yet I understand how hurtful it is when you feel like you've done nothing but beg and plead your parent to listen to you, to get curious, to be able to try to understand where you're coming from, and you butt up against no every single time. After a while, you get tired of beating your head against the wall, and after a while, you get tired of hearing no, so you just stop asking. And then the distance grows, the estrangement grows, and here we are, right? So, what I would say to adult children who are in this situation, if you have a trusted person in your life that is in your life and your parents' life, maybe you reach out to them and you ask them to have a conversation with your parent. Maybe you say, I've tried and I'm not getting anywhere and I really want to have a relationship with my parent and I'm asking you to see if you're open to potentially helping. Maybe you reach out to your therapist and talk to your therapist about reaching out to your parent. Or maybe you reach out to me. What matters in the end is that you're caring for yourself. Because if and when your parent comes back to you and has made the decision to work on themselves, to get curious about themselves and entertain a different perspective, you want to be in a healthy, peaceful place as much as possible, as much as you can be without having your parent in your life on a day-to-day basis or some sort of consistent basis, right? So please take care of yourself. Your mental health is just as important as anyone else's, and that must be maintained. And if distance is needed to do that, and this is why I tell parents, give your child space so they can work through some things without feeling like they're being hounded, right? If you need the space, take the space. Perhaps there could be a different approach in how that request is given out, right? Again, there is a distinct difference between, I just need you to do it my way, either do it my way or just shut the fuck up and I'm not going to talk to you again. Or, listen, in order to be in a relationship with you, these are the things that I need. This is what I'm asking. Here's a place or a person or whatever that I would suggest you go to, listen to, read, whatever, that might get you to, start on this path. I recognize it's a hard path. I'm on it myself. But this is really what I need. I really want to be in a relationship with you, but I cannot do it as we are. And then you have to let go, right? You have to let it be. I'm not a fan of letting it go, but you have to let it be. So I will leave it here for today. There's a whole lot more I could talk about on this topic. I mean, as with all topics, and I'm happy to maybe do a follow-up episode to this because I know that so many estranged adult children feel like they're in this boat. If I can be of help or of service to you and or your parent, please feel free to reach out. Again, the email is theestrangedheart@gmail.com, and I can also be found on Facebook and Instagram if you would like to message me there. In the meantime, remember to take care of yourself. Until next time. This brings this episode to a close. I hope that this time together was time you feel well spent and that you are able to find some takeaway nuggets to help you on your journey, wherever you may be on your estrangement and reconciliation path. If you feel you've received something helpful or positive from this podcast, please consider following us, sharing this podcast with others, leaving a positive review, perhaps entertaining becoming a guest on our show, or following us on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok under the same name, The Estranged Heart. As a reminder, there is an online support group on Facebook. If you are a estranged mom who identifies as being spiritual and approaches estrangement with a sense of curiosity rather than blame and judgment, and desire to do inner self-work and reflection, please seek us out. We can be found at facebook.com/estranged mothers support group. And lastly, if you are an estranged parent or an estranged adult child and would like to have your story shared on the podcast, anonymously or not, please reach out to me via email at theestrangedheart@gmail.com.